Guys, we spend a lot of time in front of screens. Whether it's for gaming or for business or just scrolling through your phone, chances are you're looking at a screen, which is exposing you to blue light. Now, this can cause damage to your eyes, can cause headaches, and if you find yourself pulling away from these screens and your vision is very, very blurry, there's a reason for that. This is why we're introducing today's sponsor, GMG Performance. GMG's eyeglasses act as that shield against blue light, which helps in reducing eye strain, which allows for improved concentration. It also helps with eye reflex, which is a big benefit in gaming, and it maintains the quality of your vision long term. I personally use these in the evening times. I'll use them during the day, but in the evening times when I'm just looking at my phone, because I know I need to be winding down for bed, I'll put these glasses on. And it's proven that being exposed to blue light will have detrimental effects on your sleep. Funny enough, it's like GMG knows this, which is why they now have sleeping gummies that encourages deep restorative sleep and reduces the amount of time it takes to fall asleep. Now guys, if you're interested in trying out anything GMG related, we have a great offer right now for a 25% off discount that is only active for the next 48 hours. This is a hell of a deal, guys. So whether you're wanting to get the sleepy gummies or the glasses, take advantage of this deal now. Big shout out to GMG Performance for sponsoring today's video. Today we're going to be talking about Touch of Malice, the most forgotten about raid exotic from King's Fall. Now this weapon returned to us last year during Season of Plunder, and we put out a review at the time, and we simply just said it was a fun weapon, although not meta by any means, and definitely an exotic you need to fully build into to get the most of. This season though, Touch of Malice received a pretty significant buff, and after running DPS checks on it, guys, this weapon, which is a primary weapon, is definitely worth you using. First up though, a refresher on the exotic itself. It comes with the intrinsic perk Touch of Malice, which reads, the final round in the magazine deals bonus damage drawing from the wielder's life force, and then regenerates itself, and rapidly defeating 3 targets restores health. Guardians and powerful combatants counts as more than 1 defeated target. Now the final round extra damage is the main attraction of this weapon. As previously, this was a 100% increase in damage, and it even got a further buff with this season that we're going to get into here shortly. Now the final round, unfortunately, was also the biggest downside of the weapon, as the self damage could creep up on you very fast, oftentimes killing you pretty easily, especially in higher end PvE content or even inside of PvP. I also found that the healing that it granted you from defeating targets to feel somewhat inconsistent, which didn't help Touch of Malice's case. The other perk found on Touch of Malice is Charged with Blight, where precision hits drain combatants' life force and charge up a ball of darkness. Now, you can change to an alternate firing mode and then unleash that blight projectile, shrouding combatants in darkness and temporarily blinding them. This was a nice addition to this exotic that was not found on his D1 predecessor. Now, the ball of darkness was able to blind enemies, but it did not synergize with the blind found with Arc 3.0. It also didn't do a lot of damage, but it was increased by the final round damage, which could allow it to one-shot inside of PvP. For those wondering, yes, Touch of Malice does synergize with Necrotic Grips, as it too is a weapon of sorrow. Unfortunately, it only synergizes with the Ball of Darkness portion. Still a cool interaction, but definitely not on the level of like Osteo. Now moving on to the changes. In the patch notes, Bungie stated that they increased the final round damage in PvE by 20%. They also decreased the self damage from the final round from 10 to now 7. And final round damage can no longer kill the user. They increased the health awarded by Touch of Mercy and its perk from 30 to 75. And they set up Touch of Mercy to work like Unrelenting, where Guardians and Majors give more points toward activation and increase the time allowed between kills. Now, Ball of Darkness now appropriately deals arc damage and will blind combatants and stun unstoppable champions. Now, looking at our pre-numbers, before Season of the Witch, we were doing 7,595 damage per crit against Carl on the final round, with that being 4,478 damage per body. Now, the final round then could kill the user, and you only got this small 30 health bump awarded from Touch of Mercy. Now, Touch of Mercy did not get more points toward activation from players or majors, and Ball of Darkness did not deal arc damage or blind combatants. Now, post-Season of the Witch, that damage is increased to 8,354 damage per crit on that final round against Carl, with our body shot damage going up 4,926 damage on that final round. Now, you may be doing the math going, Cross, why is this a 10% buff when it should be a 20% buff? I know, there was some confusion confusion in the patch notes, but after talking with Merc, he stated that the damage bonus went from being a 100% increase to a 120% increase in that bonus damage for the final round, which is a 10% increase overall. So from base, it is a 120% increase in damage, but pre versus post final round damage, that is only a 10% increase. Now we also have 7 final round damage, with the final round not being able to kill the user. And look at this health bump awarded by Touch of Mercy. And with Touch of Mercy acting like unrelenting, you are able to get more points from players in majors and an increased time allowed between kills. This felt substantially better and easier to proc, with it overall being more consistent. And a cherry on top is that ball of darkness deals arc damage. It blinds combatants and stuns unstoppable champions. Now with all these changes laid out, the question still remains, is Touch of Malice now meta? Guys, I actually think it is. After doing our primary damage testing, it had the second highest damage out of all the other exotic primaries that we tested, only falling behind Lucky Pants and Malfeasance. Now, Warden's Law has come about, so obviously Warden's Law and Lucky Pants is even more than that, but the point is, that's only when Lucky Pants is actually procced. The fact that Touch of Malice is still keeping up on its own without the help of an exotic armor piece, that solidifies it as the best damaged primary weapon in the game. With that being said though, you really do need to build into this exotic. And by build, I mean use a Warlock. I know, look, I'm not a Warlock main, I'm just saying. It was the best option in the past, and even now, it seems like the best option still. But I am gonna give you some options for my Hunters and Titans. On Hunters, you do have a couple options. You've got Wormhusk Crown, which can give you your health back every time you dodge, which will be necessary. If you wanna rock a melee-centric build, you could, with something like Assassin's Cowl, which gives you invisibility and restore health. But do keep in mind, guys, this is a scout rifle. You're not exactly in scout rifle territory when going for the melee. Now, what we found to be best for Hunters is building into Solar 3.0 with our healing grenades. You've got Knife Trick, which scorches targets, and pair this with Ember of Searing, which will generate fire sprites upon defeating scorched targets, as well as Ember of Mercy, which will grant restoration when picking up a fire sprite. It also grants restoration when reviving allies. Now, this does take a little bit of extra work to try to manage your healing with Solar, then back to shooting your targets, then switching over to Az to try to get health back with Touch of Mercy, but it does work. Now, moving on to our Titans. The obvious choice here is Lordly Splendor. This exotic helmet comes with the perk Cauterizing Flame, which reads, when you are critically wounded with full class ability energy, or when you cast a barricade, you'll create a sunspot at your location that has improved restoration effects. Now, Sol Invictus is going to allow us to create sunspots with solar ability Final Blows, which will grant us restoration. Now, a lot of ways you can go here, guys. Throwing hammers, you can rock any solar grenade you want. If you don't want to rock killing grenades, for fragments, I would recommend Ember of Resolve, so that solar grenade Final Blows can heal you if you are going the route of taking advantage of your solar grenade itself. Now, on to my Warlocks, which I do believe is still the best class for Touch of Malice. There are a number of options. Now, we can continue on with the solar theme by rocking Dawnblade with Well of Radiance, Healing Rift, or Phoenix Dive. And then some fragments we went over, such as Mercy, Searing, Resolve, or just a healing grenade. Now, the star of the show for Dawnblade, though, would be Well of Radiance, which makes you pretty much invincible, allowing you to continue spamming Touch of Malice. Now, this is really good if you have a super ready on hand. But when it comes to activities that you don't, though, we need something that's a little more mobile. This is when we decided to try it with Void Warlock and Devour. This allows for every final blow to restore us back to full health and grant grenade energy and extend Devour's duration. Now, we tried this first out with Seek and Filaments, which grants you Devour when casting an Empowering Rift paired with Feed the Void and Child of the Old Gods. Now, you can swap out Feed the Void for Chaos Accelerant, since we're going to be getting Devour anyways from our exotic and fragments. Now, in terms of fragments, we chose to use one that would pair well with Devour. And our Void Soul, we went with Echo of Persistence, which increases duration of Void buffs applied to us. Echo of Starvation to give us Devour upon picking up an orb, or a Void Breach. Echo of Vigilance, which gives us a temporary Void Overshield when defeating a target while our shields are depleted. And the last fragment slot is really up to you. The idea here, guys, is just to use your Rift to grant yourself Devour, that anytime your health gets low or Devour starts to run out, kill an enemy to regain health and refresh that timer, and then continue to fire away at higher health targets. Now, alternatively, you can use the new Warlock exotic Briar Binds, which has an exotic perk, One with the Void, which reads, your Void Souls have a longer duration. They also gain escalating damage and durability as they defeat targets. You can retrieve your Void Souls by interacting with them, allowing them to be redeployed. Now, the build is pretty much the same here. I was using the same aspects, the same fragments, and I focus on maintaining my Devour, and then would just move around to collect my Void Soul whenever it goes over to targets, as you can pretty much have it infinitely active. Now, if your Void Soul does go away, just simply cast your Rift to get it back. I like both of these builds. It's pretty easy to keep up Devour at all times, as well as the high uptime on your Void Soul for the extra support with both of these versions. Now, the last build I want to go over. We tried Touch of Malice with Arc, considering it can now synergize. Now, we pair this with the Arc Soul aspect to give us an Arc Soul upon casting our Rift, and Electrostatic Mine, which is going to generate Onyx Traces for us when defeating targets with Arc abilities or defeating jolted and blinded targets. Now, Onyx Traces grants us a small amount of ability energy to each of your abilities when picked up, which will help get our Rift back quicker for more healing and for another reason that we're going to get into in just a moment. First, though, I want to go over the fragments that we rocked here. We have Spark of Discharge, where Arc Weapon Final Blows have a chance to create an Onyx Trace. Next, we have Spark of Resistance, where while surrounded by combatants, you are more resistant to incoming damage. We have Spark of Bolts, where finishers make you amplified. And lastly, we ran Spark of Shock, allowing our Arc Grenades to jolt targets. Now for our exotic armor piece, we have Vesper of Radius. Now, for those who aren't aware, Vesper is a powerhouse after its rework. Its exotic perk, Planetary Torrent, states that Rifts periodically release Arc Shockwaves, and Final Blows with these shockwaves creates an Arc Explosion. And while an Arc subclass is equipped, the shockwaves and subsequent explosions blinds nearby targets. Now, Rift energy recharges faster when you are surrounded by those targets. Essentially, our whole playstyle is going to be around playing our Rift while simultaneously utilizing Touch of Malice's extra damage. The Arc Shockwaves released from Vesper should be enough to kill most red bar ads, and the Arc Explosions from these Final Blows help clear out any remaining ads around you. Now, one of the biggest parts of Vesper is the extra Rift regeneration when surrounded by enemies. Since you're putting yourself between enemies to begin with when using Vesper, you'll be proccing this often, and my lord, does it recharge your Rift fast. Combine this with Onyx Traces, and you'll be constantly generating and gaining that damage resist when surrounded from Spark of Resistance, while putting out some very nice damage with Touch of Malice. And since your Rift is going to be constantly up, you'll be out healing any of the damage being done to you by touch. Guys, we really enjoyed using this build. Truly, it's got slaying power, it's potent enough from all ranges, and it just allows you to just mindlessly lay on the trigger with Touch of Malice. Now, with any of these Warlock builds, the mods you'll be wanting to run, they can vary. You actually don't need to build too much into your Rifts because everything else synergizes here. Things like Grenade Kickstart is still really good. You could still rock things like Utility Kickstart, Dynamo for that extra super energy, Kinetic Surges are also really nice for the extra damage for Touch of Malice. But again, everything here is completely up to you. We do have a dim link to these builds down below if you want to just plug and go. Overall, guys, the buffs given out to Touch of Malice have proven to be very nice. It has definitely risen to the top of the charts amongst primary weapons. And even though everyone is going to be like, but Cross, why would I want to do DPS with a primary weapon when I've got specials in heavy? Keep in mind, guys, there have been DPS checkpoints in the past. Caretaker, during Vow the Disciple, literally had you running out of ammo, and the teams that lost were the ones that couldn't get enough damage there in the final phase of that boss, which at the time, Outbreak Perfected came in clutch. The next time that happens, I'll be pulling out my Touch of Malice. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.